And that's it. Just like that, we're live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's pre-show for the N10-007 Network Plus Study Group. We can get rid of our podcast intro text as if I haven't figured out what that's supposed to be by now. We've got recording. Are we going? Yeah, we're recording here. I see them. Not recording up there. We are recording on YouTube, though. So we got 3 recordings going. Usually we got 4. Now we got 3. I've cut down the number of recordings, but I've simplified the process. Hi, everybody. Hi, chat room. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. We've got all N10-007 Q&A today. Plenty of Network Plus in store in this first hour. And then the second hour, I will open up the phone lines. I'll take questions from the chat room. I mean, I take questions from the chat room just sort of usually, but more specifically in the second hour. So there you go. That's what we're doing. Well, hi. Thanks for tuning in live. Good to have you here. Hello, San Diego, California, checking in over on the west coast of the United States. This is always available on replay immediately afterwards on YouTube. I hit the stop button, and then it goes ahead and processes for a minute or two, and then it's available. Hello, Pembroke Pines, Pines Boulevard, Miramar Parkway. I guess Miramar Parkway technically in Miramar, isn't it? Pines Boulevard and Pembroke Pines. There's all Network Plus today. I've got to work on the next set for next week. Next week is Security Plus. What are the specs on my workstation? This is a 3-year-old iMac Pro, a product they don't even make anymore. And the specifications roughly are 4 terabyte of SSD. There is 128 gig of RAM. And get this, a Radeon Pro Vega 64. That's a 16 gigabyte graphics adapter inside of this. Not very powerful. Now, at the time it was, 3 years ago, super powerful. But now things have just leapfrogged. So this is the iMac Pro from 2017. I don't know if you can see that over my head. There you go. See? I mean, it's pretty nice. 2.3 gigahertz, 18 core Xeon W. That's not bad. This memory, though, DDR4 2666. So although I got 128 gig of it, which I find useful, it's just sort of an older technology now. It still runs so well, though. I was just talking about this with Mrs. Professor Messer yesterday, is that I'm editing 4K video on this, putting it out to YouTube. I've already published, 50-something videos in the last month or so on YouTube, all 4K. So there's some great. This is it's a workhorse. I overspec'd it when I bought it so that it would have longevity, because it's an Apple product and you never know when the next Apple product is going to come out. And sure enough, it's now been over 3 years and I'm waiting for that next Apple product to come out, and it hasn't come out yet. So this is what I planned for, and I guess the investment was good. 2017 iMac Pro. I guess it's more than 3 years, isn't it? 3 or 4. Did you miss the study group? Not yet. You're tuning in thinking they're not really talking about Network Plus. It's the pre-show. We start in 5 minutes. 5 minutes will get you started. So you didn't miss a thing. Did not miss anything. Hello, Beaufort, Georgia, and Baltimore, Maryland, and New York City, and Minnesota, and Tennessee, and Avon, Indiana. Got plenty going on. What do I think about jobs being listed as entry level, but 3 or more years of experience needed? It's just to apply. They don't know. Just apply. Don't let weirdly written job postings stop you from sending your resume into a job that you're perfectly qualified for. So they can be the ones that say no. You should not be the one that says no. If it's an entry-level job and you qualify for that job, send in the application. Do not worry about, oh, you need to know about DNA sequencing and you need to understand quantum computing. No, don't worry about that. Just send in your application. 5 minutes. 5 minutes to go, everybody. Let's check cameras real quick. It looks pretty good here. So far, so good. Hello, Bonn, Germany, and Fort Worth, Texas. The new MacBook is out. And this is my MacBook, which I bought at about the same time as this. This MacBook Pro is, what is it? Also 2017 15-inch, a 3.1 gigahertz quad-core i7, 16 gig of memory. And I think I've got 2 gig of, or 2 terabytes of SSD. What do I have in this? I have 1 terabyte of SSD. In fact, it's almost filled up. I got to fix that. So I ordered a new MacBook Pro this week too. So it is time to upgrade, and I've been waiting for that. I have had all my money in a little pile and was ready for it. And when the new specs came out, they introduced the new ones yesterday, and just phenomenal specifications. Just well-engineered piece of equipment. And I thought, well, we'll upgrade and see how that goes. So I have to wait until the middle of November to get it, but we will be swapping this out. I will be doing something else with this. I just don't know what yet, because this one works great. Both of these work very well. The only problem with this one is the problem everybody has with older laptops is the batteries get old, and the keyboard on this one not so great. That's sort of a common problem with that type of. Yes, got the M1 Max Pro, absolutely. Because what I'm thinking, the new MacBook Pro is so far beyond the iMac Pro that I'm using here. It's so light years beyond. It can drive 3 4K monitors and a television, I think. I could technically replace the iMac with the new MacBook Pro and see extensive improvements in performance. I just don't want to run a laptop on my desk, because when I'm pumping through these videos, there's a lot of heat. And laptops, as we all know, not so great with the heat. So try not to do that. Try not to get into that situation. But I love the 5K displays that I have in front of me are fantastic. It's perfect for what I'm doing. The 4K videos are editing on this like a champ. For a 3 to 4 year old iMac Pro, it is kicking. Now I can't do any of the larger than 4K. I can't do 8K, but I don't have any 8K equipment, so I think we're okay. And in fact, what you're seeing is 1080p, because the process of me sending a video stream to YouTube has to process the video signal, chop it up into pieces, and send it to you in the appropriate format. And that transmission, that reprocessing of the video stream takes time. When it's a 1080p, we got the technology to reprocess that very quickly. So by the time I say it, you see it in just a few seconds, which is great when we have conversations like this or when I do the Q&A. Well, when I take it up to 4K, the delay goes to about 20 to 30 seconds. So although I have everything I need to broadcast, my live stream broadcasting device here does 4K, but I just can't do 4K because it's not interactive enough. It's not fast enough for this. Now, if it was just a one-way thing, or we didn't have a lot of back and forth, then we could probably get away with that. But not so much here. So we'll see. I think we are about ready. We got just about a minute to go. I think I have all the right graphics up. Let's make a quick check. I do. That looks pretty good. All right. There's folks checking in from all over. St. Vincent is here. New York, Virginia. We'll talk about, do you do 008 or do you do 007 in just a bit. That's one of the first things we talk about on the live stream. Let's get our keynote going. Green light, beautiful. Let's check cameras. Those all look good. So now it's time to do a live stream. Here we go, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the October 2021 Professor Messer N10-007 Network Plus Study Group. All Network Plus all the time, at least today. Anyway, I'll give you questions in this first hour that come directly from the Network Plus exam objectives. And then the second hour, I'll open up the phone lines. We'll talk about all kinds of different things, whatever you'd like to talk about. How about that? So I'll stop asking questions after an hour. You can ask me questions in the second hour, and we can talk about whatever you'd like. We've already talked about a little bit of it in the pre-show. If you are here watching live, you can participate online on the internet. Just visit this URL, pop open a new browser window, go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can answer the questions that I will be asking in this first hour. We've also got an app that can do this as well, because why shouldn't you? The app is the Socrative Student app. There is a Socrative Teacher app. You don't want that one. You want the Socrative Student app. And that will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, just like my domain name. PROFESSORMESSER. Make sure you spell it right, or there won't be anybody in the room. So that's not what we're shooting for. We want you to actually be there in the room and able to watch and take and answer and do all the things that we're going to do today. If you do all of that, you will see there's a question waiting for you in that room. The question asks, an attacker has created a DOS by sending STP frames from their workstation. Which of the following would prevent this from occurring? Would it be BPDU guard, DHCP snooping, router, flood guard, or SIM? Now, if you think you know the answer, do not answer online. Do not answer in the chat room. I guess you do answer online, but not in the chat room. You answer by visiting the URL you see on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Visit that URL and answer what you think that might be. You can lock in your answer there. Please no hints in the chat room. Please no answers in the chat room. We'll figure it out once we get on the other side of this. Thanks for being here. We do these study groups for Network Plus once a month. And of course, we're here all the time doing other things. For example, you've got your weekly Network Plus pop quiz available on Twitter and Instagram. Go to professormesser.com/Twitter or professormesser.com/Instagram to be able to see those. There's one that's, I think it came out today, or it's going to come out today while we're in the middle of this, while we're doing this. We also have all of our videos on YouTube. If you want to find me on LinkedIn, you just type professormesser.com/YouTube/ LinkedIn /Instagram /Twitter. You get the idea. It's easy to find us, and we'd love to have you join us, whatever your favorite social media happens to be. We've also got a lot to talk about Network Plus. Now, if you've looked around, you'll notice that there are two separate exams you could take right now. One is the N10-007, and the other is the N10-008. You only need to take one of these. So let's talk about both of them. The first one is the N10-007. It was released on March the 1st of 2018. It will be retired on June the 30th of 2022. So by the end of June, the 007 will be away. Well, we're sitting here in October. You still have plenty of time to study for the Network Plus exam with the N10-007 exam objectives, with the N10-007 exam. It's a perfectly reasonable option, especially, we'll talk in a moment, about the lack of new materials that are currently out, but this is the normal thing that happens when an exam is released. The N10-007 exam is 90 minutes long. You get a maximum of 90 questions. You could get fewer than that. You have to score on a scale from 100 to 900, a score of 720. And there will be a mixture of multiple choice questions and performance-based questions. We'll talk about what the differences in those might be as well. Now, for those that have been watching, about a month ago, we had a new version of the Network Plus was released, the N10-008. And in the meantime, both of these exams are available to take up until June the 30th, at which time the 007 will be retired. This is an exam that was released, as I mentioned, on September the 15th of last month. It is probably going to retire March of 2025, if we have to estimate, which means very, very long time in the future. Now, the issue and the question, it's already come up in the chat room, is which one do you take? Do you take the 007 or do you take the 008? Now, the 008 has been out about a month. There are limited study resources available. I have videos. There are places you can find 008 content, but it's nothing like the amount of content available for the 007. And if we're working the angles here, if we're trying to figure out the best possible chance of passing, and I think all of us would like the best possible chance of passing, then you need to have the largest number of study materials available to you. That means the 007 is still a winner. That is still the better choice right now as we sit here in October, the middle of October of 2021. So if someone asked me today, which one should I take? I can take either one of these. I haven't started studying yet. What should I take? I'd say take the 007. You've got until June. There's no pressure with time, and there's so many more materials available. Now, I realize some of you don't care about that. Some of you want to take the newer one regardless, and that's fine. That's just the normal thing that happens. There are just a fewer limited number of resources available for the 008, but by the time we do this next month, you're probably going to see some more books will be out, some more study materials will be available. So although I tell people never wait to get certified, you could reasonably go either way with this one. I still think the 007 gives you a better chance of passing, but I understand that some people just don't like to take the older version, even though the information in that version is completely valid on today's networks. It's one of those situations. So figure out the one that makes sense for you. Go take that version. I don't think you can go wrong either way, which is a great thing. So no matter what you choose, no matter when you flip that coin, you are a winner either way. So you're fine regardless of which one you'd like to take. Don't forget that whether you're taking the 007 or the 008, we've got videos on our website. We got course notes on our website for either. There's the course notes for the 007 or the 008. We've got plenty of study materials for you regardless of which one you choose. Right now, I'm finishing up the videos for the 008. We're almost done. In the meantime, if you'd like to take the 007, we have all of our videos, our audio downloads, our exam hacks ebook, our course notes, and more is available out there on our Network Plus Success Bundle. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/netsuccess. Also let you know that there is an audio version, a replay of this in an audio version and a podcast version. You'll find that at professormesser.com/podcast for my A+ Network Plus and Security Plus study groups. And this will automatically download into your podcast listening program, or you can stream them directly from that page, professormesser.com/podcast. If you go out and look at YouTube, there's also a YouTube replay available, a video replay of all of this. And you've also got timestamps on that page. You'll notice my marketing manager, Lori. Hi, Lori. She's watching the replay of this. Everybody say hi to Lori. She is going through and watching the chat go by. She's turned this up to like 2x, and she puts down all of the timestamps for this study group. So you can go back years in these study groups and find exactly what you're looking for by the second, to the exact second, which is great. You can find that out on the YouTube video descriptions. There's also a 24/7 chat because I can't be live all the time. So you can, of course, visit the chat. We've got a Discord available. Go to professormesser.com/Discord. That will take you right there. If you're not already on our Discord server, we'd love to have you join us. We always have a lot of fun there. And usually when I'm not live here, I'm always checking in with the chat over on the Discord server. If you are planning to take any of your A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, any of your CompTIA exams, you can go to the CompTIA website, the Pearson VUE website at that point, and register and pay full price to take your exam. Or you can get a discount. And I've got discounts on my website. You could save quite a bit just by visiting professormesser.com/vouchers. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need to hunt around the internet. You don't need a plug-in for your browser. Just visit the website and it's already discounted. Everybody gets the same discounted price at professormesser.com/vouchers. And if that wasn't good enough, I'll also give you a copy of my exam hacks ebooks for free if you purchase your voucher on the Professor Messer website. So not only are you getting a voucher for a discounted price, you're also getting an exam hacks book that can perhaps even get you a couple of extra points on your exam Go to professormesser.com/vouchers to find out more about that. Let's go back to that question I asked earlier, which was an attacker has created a DOS by sending STP frames from their workstation. Which of the following would prevent this from occurring? Would it be BPDU guard, DHCP snooping, router, flood guard, or SIM? And if we look at the results, we're a little torn. 43% of you say it's BPDU guard, although 41%, almost a tie, let's call it a tie, said flood guard are the two options. So we've got a couple to choose from. Single digit SIM said 9% of you, 7% DHCP snooping, and 0% said a router would do it. Well, the key with this question is it asks specifically about STP frames. STP is the spanning tree protocol. The spanning tree protocol communicates between switches, between bridges, using a bridge protocol data unit. So in order to manage those BPDUs, you need to use BPDU guard to prevent someone from sending a rogue BPDU frame and somehow disrupting the spanning tree configuration on your network. This BPDU guard is kind of a generic name. If you were to look at a Cisco switch, for example, they will call it BPDU guard. They'll call it a number of different functions, but it works in conjunction with portfast, which is a method within the switch where they just assume that you're going to be a workstation. And then if you suddenly send something like a BPDU, they go, wait a second, you're supposed to be a workstation. Workstations don't send BPDU. I'm going to turn you off. I'm going to click. You no longer can communicate on the network. BPDU guard is what does that. See that flashing on the screen? I got to fix that video. I apologize. Fortunately, we won't look at it much longer and deal with that. BPDU guard was the right answer in this case. If you answered A, BPDU guard, that is correct. Now, if there is some other type of flooding, if it was tons of broadcasts hitting the network at one time, flood guard would be a better choice. We can also use that to limit the devices communicating on a particular interface at a particular time. A lot of great functionality there, but that's not what would prevent STP frames from being sent from someone's workstation. That really is BPDU guard. That's the right answer. If you answered A, BPDU guard, you got that one absolutely right. It would also not be DHCP snooping, which stops rogue DHCP servers. It would not be a security information event manager, a SIM, and then would not be a router. Router's not going to stop STP frames. STP is all at layer, well, I guess it would technically stop them, but not within your own network. As we all know, those layer 2 communications, broadcast and multicast, don't traverse routers, but that's not going to prevent the spanning tree frames from being sent in the first place. BPDU guard and flood guard are two different technologies used for two different things. And in this case, BPDU guard was the one we were looking for. Let's now shift gears. Now that you've gone in, you can answer the question. You know it's what you were expecting. Now let's do a performance-based question. I have a performance-based question. The very first new question of every study group is a performance-based question. If you've never taken one of these CompTIA exams before, you might be thrown by this. So this is good information to know. When you start your exam, the first handful of questions you get will not be multiple choice. You know, the one we just did with spanning tree and BPDU guard, that was a multiple choice question. There was a question and multiple choices to choose from. But you could get a question that is not multiple choice. It could be a question that is a fill in the blank. It could be a command prompt. It could be a drag and drop. It could be putting things in a particular order or sorting them. So you never know exactly what it's going to be, but all of the topics from the performance-based questions are still coming from the exam objectives. Today, I have for you a matching question, and this matching question specifically about DNS record types. So here is your performance-based question of the month. I want you to match these DNS record types to their descriptions. I have 4 record types, but I have 6 descriptions. So 2 will be left over at the end. I guess for bonus points, you can tell me what the 2 left over would correlate to. So the record types, their descriptions, the 4 DNS record types I have are MX, PTR, SRV, and A. Those are the 4 record types that you're working through. The 6 different descriptions I have are: assign a secondary name to a database server, determine the IP address of a VoIP controller, resolve an IPv4 address based on an FQDN, locate the email server for a domain, validate the digital signature of an email message, and finally, determine the FQDN of an IP address. We have those 6 different descriptions to match somehow to MX, PTR, SRV, and A. Do you know your record types for DNS? If your network is broken, it's probably DNS. It's always DNS, isn't it? Unless, of course, like we've seen recently, it's BGP. Although I want to believe maybe it was DNS that caused the problem. Ultimately, I really feel like DNS is at the root of everything. All of our issues is that piece of it. This is a matching question that kind of follows the same style of matching questions on the actual exam, because they will give you more of one than the other, so you can't do a one-to-one, which I think are pretty good, because then you can't kind of shift things around. You can't do a calculatus limitatus type of thing. You really do need to know these 4 different DNS record types and understand what the descriptions are. Notice also, it's not a trivia question. You rarely get a trivia question on this. So I know it does have 1 B, C, D, but that's because I can't do things properly. That's because if you see online, if you notice on this, I marked it 1 B, C, D. Makes perfect sense to me. It really should be 1, 2, 3, 4. But I think you'll be okay. I can't match them up on my side anyway. So as long as you know what they are, you'll be fine. But as I was mentioning, we don't often get trivia questions on the exam. I'm not asking you, what does the MX record mean? What does the MX stand for? I'm not asking you that. I don't care. I mean, I do care, but I don't care. I want to know, what does that do for you? What is the underlying function of the MX record type, of the PTR record type, of the SRV record type, of the A record type? So that's why when I present these to you, I'm never asking you, I rarely ask you for a trivia answer or to give me the explanation or what the abbreviation stands for. So that is, yes, PTR is not the public test room. It is not. I mean, it is, but it's not in this context. That's one of the challenges also with that you'll find in this exam and other things, is that you can have some things that are used more than once. We were just talking, for instance, about spanning tree protocol, STP. This is Network Plus, everybody. That could easily be shielded twisted pair. So it's all about context as well. And I'm not asking you what STP means, and I'm not asking you what those 2 things are abbreviated to. I'm asking you what they mean, how you would use them. Use them in a practical sense, and that would be great. There is a possibility you could get some of these right and some of these wrong. CompTIA says on their exam that they could possibly give you a partial credit, but they also tell you they could not give you partial credit too. They leave it open, but at least they say it's a possibility. On a question like this, I would imagine that it would be a possibility. Let's see how we did with this one. A number of you are slowly inputting them into the system, which is why I'm still talking. For those of you listening on the podcast side, I think we need some little more help with our DNS record types. So let's go through the DNS record types and let's see if we can figure out what they are. Let's start with MX. The MX record is associated with answer D, locate the email server for a domain. MX record is your mail exchange record. And so that is an incredibly important record. If you mess up your MX record, you won't get any emails. In fact, I've told people this before. I had a family member that had their own hosted site, and They went in and just changed a bunch of DNS settings because they were reading on another site that that's how you should set it up. They were working fine, and then they changed all their MX stuff around, changed all of their DNS records around, and they didn't realize the scope of what they were doing when they did that. And sure enough, everything broke. So changing your MX record could cause you not to receive email messages. So MX record is associated with the email server for the domain. Next on the list, the PTR record. PTR stands for pointer. That determines the fully qualified domain name, the FQDN, of an IP address. So I can put an IP address. I can pose the IP address to the DNS server, and it will tell me what name of the device they believe it's associated with if there is a record associated with it. That's sort of the reverse of what we normally do with DNS, isn't it? Normally, we ask the DNS server, tell me the IP address of google.com, and it tells you. Well, this is the reverse. Here's an IP address. What is that IP address for? And if there is something in the DNS that can tell you, there is a record for it, it will tell you. And it will, it's sort of a reverse configure. I don't want to call it reverse DNS because that's something else. But it is the reverse of what you would normally expect for a DNS query. But both are completely valid and can come in handy depending on what you're doing. I use that PTR record lookup all the time because I'm always trying to figure out what IP address is this? Where did this come from? What is it associated with? Next on our list, SRV. SRV is a service record. So if you're trying to find a particular service on your network, use SRV record. For example, if you are on a Microsoft network, you are probably on an Active Directory network at work in your place of business. That Active Directory server service is out there, but how does your system find the Active Directory server? Such an important server, you have to authenticate and gain access to your network by talking to that server. But how do you find the server? Well, your system performs a DNS lookup of the service record associated with Active Directory, and it returns an IP address. So if you're ever setting up an integration, I used to do a lot of this with firewalls, where the firewall needed to communicate to the Active Directory server, and so I knew all of the DNS command line, NS lookup things to be able to properly ask the DNS server, where is the Active Directory IP address? And the SRV record is what allowed me to see that information. Last on our list is, hopefully the easy one, the A record. A record is matched with C, resolve an IPv4 address based on a fully qualified domain name, sort of the reverse of what we just did with the PTR record. So with PTR, we're giving the DNS server an IP address and getting a name. With an A record, we're sending a name and getting an IP address, both of those. So those are the four answers. MX is locate the email server for domain. PTR is determine the fully qualified domain name of an IP address. SRV record determines the IP address of a service, in this case a VoIP controller. And an A record resolves an IPv4 address based on a fully qualified domain name. That means there were two left over we did not use. One was assign a secondary name to a database server, and the other one is validate the digital signature of an email message. What DNS record types best fit those? Well, assigning a secondary name to a database server would be a canonical name or a CNAME record. CNAME, name is what we were looking for. Canonical name, assigning a secondary name. So you could have a single IP address, and that IP address could be the green server, the purple server, the blue server, and the yellow server. It could all have different names, but it's the same IP address. We create one single record for that IP address, and then we can put in the other names right there that point to the first original name of that device. And lastly, validating the digital signature of an email message requires some additional text, specifically a public key that you can use to validate that information. And you'll find that in the DNS server under a text record, or TXT. That's what we were looking for validating the digital signature of an email message. Wow, that's a lot in a very small grouping of matching questions, but hopefully you remembered some of those DNS records. Now, if you don't, there's an entire video on my N10-007. It's video 1.8 DNS record types, and there's already a DNS record type video also on the N10-008. You'll find it out there. I think it's already posted. Maybe not, but it's certainly out there. You'll certainly be able to find it once the entire set is done. We're well over halfway there on that course. So you should be able to find quite a bit associated with the N10-008 along with 007. Plenty there to work through. Let's see how'd you do? Well, I can't tell from my side, but you should be able to work through and figure out what the different options might be for you. Hopefully that performance-based question was one that you're familiar with. If not, make sure you go back and look at those configurations for that piece. Yes, I realize there's a little bit of a flashy flash there, but I don't go away. Just the slide underneath me does. It does blink a little bit. I'm going to fix that eventually. But in the meantime, we got another question we can do. We're back to multiple choice-based questions. This one asks, a manager is implementing an access control system that requires users to be physically located at the data center door before granting access. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Would it be an asset tracking tag, a smart card, a token generator, biometrics, or a key and lock? A manager is implementing an access control system that requires users to be physically located at the data center door before granting access. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it an asset tracking tag, a smart card, a token generator, biometrics, or a key and lock? If you think you know the answer, lock in your answer by going to professormesser.com/QA and lock it in right there. Follow that link on your screen. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. For the DNS records, question came in. Wouldn't the SRV record show the host name before the IP address of that service? SRV records, as I recall, do show a host name, and I eventually resolved the IP from that. That's how we got there for the Active Directory example, for example. So yes, it's a multi-step process, very similar to the canonical name. Canonical name points you to a name that is the original IP address for that. Nope, only one correct answer on this one. A manager is implementing an access control system that requires users to be physically located at the data center door before granting access. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Only one of them would provide this functionality, quite honestly. An asset tracking tag, a smart card, a token generator, biometrics, or a key and lock. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock it in. Should be able to figure those out. There's a lot of different options available, in fact, on this one. And only one really is the right answer, and we'll explain why in just a moment. But there's very much a single piece of this. Did I merge Server Plus and Network Plus into the same learning material? No, I don't have any Server Plus material. So nothing to merge. That was easy. Definitely not. This question, the type of content in this question is covered in many different types of exams, including A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and many, many, many others. So security is a big deal. Absolutely, security is a big deal. We do have Super Chat. Thank you for the 100 quantity of Super Chat. I don't recognize the symbol, but you are from India. Thank you for your Super Chat. On the 8th of this month, you passed your Network Plus. Fantastic. Congratulations. You passed A+ on the June 24th. Didn't get a physical cert. I have no idea if from a physical cert perspective, what they do on the international. But it's a good question to them to pose to CompTIA. Maybe they can give you more details on those. Is it the rupee? Is that 100 rupees? Thank you so much for that. We sure appreciate that. I wasn't quite sure. I put the two together, but I don't know the symbol for a rupee. I need to be better with my symbols, my currency symbols. I need to work on that. See, the chat room knows. They keep me straight. Thank you, chat room. You guys are awesome. I appreciate that. There is one good answer on this one. Let's see how you did for this. The question asked, and I was basically 100 rupees, probably about $1 US, and I'm happy to get it. Thank you. Every little bit goes to keeping these lights on, and I appreciate your support of the website as well. This question asked, a manager is implementing an access control system that requires users to be physically located at the data center door before granting access. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it asset tracking tags, smart card, token generator, biometrics, or a key and lock? 59% of you say that it's biometrics. That's a pretty good number, although 24% of you, a quarter of you, say a smart card is what would do it. That's what you need to work through. The 12% of you, double digits, said key and lock is what would provide that functionality. And then 2% said token generator and 2% said asset tracking tags. So the real question here, the thing we're trying to figure out, is that the manager wants to confirm and know for sure that someone is physically at the door before they can get access. So what would allow them to physically be at the door? An asset tracking tag? Well, anybody could bring up an asset tracking tag and say it's me. That's not going to work for you. A token generator? Token generator doesn't help you very much because anybody can bring up a token generator and get the token generator to provide a token. That doesn't help you. A key and a lock? Well, here's my keys. Go open the door. I won't be there. So that doesn't help you either. Last two on the list, a smart card. The smart card is definitely associated with me, but because it's a card, I could hand it to someone else and they could take the card with them themselves. So the real important one here, the only answer that would really verify without a question of a doubt that it's really me physically located at the data center door to get access is going to be biometrics. It's going to be something that can have you put your fingerprint, handprint, voice print, iris print, some type of print of you that is going to allow you access. This is really going to force you to be physically there to put your fingerprint into the biometric reader. We see this everywhere these days. You go outside the scope of technology these days. You go to a theme park. You use biometrics these days to verify yourself and have access to those. So that is a good example of making sure that you're able to get authenticated into that system. It's a really great form of authentication is biometrics. Many types of options you should choose, but the one we were looking for here that would verify that it's you is definitely the biometrics. That's the one we were looking for. That can get you there. Unless we clone, that's correct, chat room. If we clone me, the clone, I think, wouldn't it have the same fingerprint? Do clones have the same fingerprint? I think they do, right? Would they? I don't know. Twins, do twins have the same fingerprint? They're the same DNA. All these questions. Once we get to that point and have that problem, then we'll answer that one. See, twins don't have the same fingerprint. So maybe a clone wouldn't have the same fingerprint. One of those things. I know this is why I'm in technology, by the way. Mrs. Professor Messer is on the medical side. She handles medical things. That's the reason I don't, because I would get it wrong every time. The answer here, biometrics, 62% of you got that one absolutely right. That is the right answer. That would really verify that it really was you at the door right there. Very easy to do. Let's do another question. Here's one that's asking about cables. This question asks, a network administrator is troubleshooting a network cable with a severed wire. Which of the following would describe this issue? Would that be crosstalk, open, jitter, short circuit, or attenuation? And we're looking for the best fit here. Don't split the hairs. A network administrator is troubleshooting a network cable with a severed wire. Which of the following would describe this issue? Would it be crosstalk, open, jitter, short circuit, or attenuation? If you think you know the answer, follow that link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer for those. Absolutely. Do I have a time frame to receive the CEU emails? In fact, I'll talk about this in a moment. Usually it takes me about a week. You'll notice we are less than a week since our last study group. So it's not that you never received the email, it's that you haven't yet. But if you sent one in, you will be receiving one. Always make sure you check your spam and nothing got stuck in there. But the ones from last week have not been processed yet. So they'll probably be processed today, tomorrow, somewhere in there. Have those capabilities. So you network administrators having cable problems, hopefully this is an question and answer you're familiar with. Being able to resolve these. And by the way, each of these answers you should know about. They're all from the CompTIA exam objectives. So make sure that you know what all of these things happen to mean. It's going to be an important part of working through the troubleshooting section of the exam. And that's the part I think that gives people the most problems, is the troubleshooting section. I think that's where it would come from as well. Yes, clearing the airports, they do use fingerprints and video. In fact, now the airlines have just started to use face recognition. I got on an international flight. Was it an international flight? I want to say it was. I just walked on. I did not hand them my boarding pass. I didn't put anything into a machine. I just walked straight ahead. And it said, yep, that's you. Come on board. So that's a little bit of a challenge, isn't it? What do you do with that? Is that good or bad? The answer is yes. That's what that is. A network administrator is troubleshooting a network cable with a severed wire. Which of the following would describe this issue? Is it crosstalk, open, jitter, short circuit, or attenuation? Yeah, I think I was going from Atlanta to Canada. I think that's what it was. And that's where they did it. And that was not TSA pre-check. That was boarding the plane. That was a Delta feature. That was a Delta thing. For those of you that answered this one, let's see the results. Finally, let me get rid of this. 60% of you say it's open is what that refers to. 21% say that's a short circuit. 11% said that's attenuation. I guess it's an extreme form of attenuation. 8% said crosstalk and 1% said jitter. So is it really open? 59% of us said that's an open. A short circuit is when you have so many wires inside of this sheath, of course. There are 8 wires in that Ethernet cable. What if some of the copper of one wire touched the copper of another wire? That would be a short circuit. That's what we're referring to, is the short circuit part of it. The open circuit is one where it's a complete break. And that was the question here. It's a broken connection. There's nothing's touching each other at all, is an open circuit. So that's the one we were really looking for in this example, was the open circuit. These could be real problem, especially if it's sometimes touching and sometimes not touching. How many times have we just said, this cable's no good. Let's throw out this cable, put a new one in place. Be the easy way to do it, is to make that happen. The answer here, an open circuit, the 60% of you chose that one, got that one absolutely right. And we know now why it would not be the short circuit the 20% of you chose. Crosstalk is when signal that you're sending on one pair of wire somehow leaks its way, doesn't somehow, physically it does. It leaks its way onto other wires that are nearby. Crosstalk. This obviously an important thing to think about, because when you're sending the signal out on the other end, are we getting a lot of bleed through on that line with the crosstalk? That could be the case, but certainly not the problem we have here with a severed wire. Attenuation, I mentioned attenuation. This would be an extreme form of attenuation, because we could assume when you cut the wire, you lose signal. Well, attenuation implies there is somewhat of a signal loss. There is a percentage of signal loss. Attenuation does not imply that there is 100% signal loss, although that can ultimately be a result of attenuation. So I'll give you 1/6 credit on that. I just picked a number. I'll give you 1/6 credit on that one, since the points don't matter. We also have 1% said jitter. We know jitter is the amount of time between frames. In this case, we're not dealing with a time problem. We're dealing with a severed wire, so that's why it wouldn't be jitter. The right answer, the one everyone chose, open. 60% of you chose open. That is the correct response. Mr. Santiago in the chat room with a $5 super chat and the note that says, thank you for all you do for us. Well, I thank you back. You're welcome, and I thank you back for being here and for your encouragement and for the super chat donation. We appreciate that too. And Mr. Tunde in the chat room also with a $9.99 super chat and no special message. So I'll just send my thank yous to you. We sure appreciate that. It does help to keep things going. And occasionally it does help to encourage me and get more of this content written. And we're writing a lot of content right now. So it's great to see you appreciating that we're putting these things out, and hopefully it's something that can help you as well. I have some even new things coming out shortly on the Network Plus side I'm really excited about. We'll have to step through those as well. There is so much that we have to go through for the Network Plus. Just the N10-007 exam content, 101 videos, 12 hours of content. The structure is a little different for the 008. I think it's going to be 90 videos, but I shrunk some together. And I'm probably going to be 12 hours of content when we're done, probably over that. It's bigger. It's a bigger exam. Slightly larger. So I expect it will probably be slightly larger as well. But there's so much content. So I mentioned earlier, for those of you that were paying attention, that we have course notes for the 007 and course notes for the 008. See, they're blurry because I have them up to the camera. That's what I get for getting that lens that I got there. The 007 and the 008. You can get the physical version of these. This is what I have here. Is the physical version of the course notes and everything that's in there. Beautiful, full color, high quality, glossy paper. I wouldn't do it any other way. There's also a digital version of the course notes. Costs a little bit less because it's digital, which is kind of nice. The digital version, there it is. Those are the course notes that have so much inside of them. I'm just going to flip through a little bit so you can get a feel for what those course notes are. All of the text, all of the graphics, all of the important charts from my videos are in these course notes. They cover everything that I have in the videos. Instead of me giving you slides, which I don't think are very useful when you're trying to study, this is really designed to be something you can study after watching these. That doesn't replace your book. It doesn't replace the videos. But when you're struggling with trying to figure out how do I take all of this content and shrink it down into one single study guide, well, that would be the course notes. That's exactly what you can use them for. Learn more on my website. Go to ProfessorMesser.com. Follow the links at the top of the page for the 007 or the 008. Make sure you pick the right one for the video series that you need for the exam that you're taking. You want to be sure you get the right one. That's a great way to help support what we're doing as well. And speaking of support, Grumble Grows in the chat room, $5 with the super chat. Is that a pug in the avatar? It's hard to see from here. And Grumble says, don't have much right now. I can't imagine how many people you've helped, including me. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you, Professor. Good luck to anyone trying. And I concur. Good luck to everybody who is in the middle of doing this. I love the Network Plus certification. It's a fun one. It's sort of the glue that all of IT fits around. And that's one of the reasons I just think it's such a great thing to go with, to learn, is what's in the Network Plus, because there's so much there that you will use everywhere else in IT for the rest of your career, and I speak from experience. So let's do another question. I've got another one here. Thank you, by the way, Grumble Grows, for that $5 super chat. We do appreciate it. This is a question about firewalls and what we're doing with firewalls, an OSI question that asks, a firewall is blocking all traffic that uses TCP 3389. Which OSI layer is associated with this process? Is it, wrong graphic, layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, or layer 7? A firewall is blocking all traffic using TCP 3389. Which OSI layer is associated with this process? Is it layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, or layer 7? If you think you know the answer, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. Be able to figure that one out. Derek Wagner in the chat room, $5 super chat donation. Thank you so much. Derek says, passed my Security Plus today. Hello. Congratulations. That's a tough one. And you got through it. That's got to feel good, right? Derek says, thankful for all the content you provide. Course notes are fantastic. Thank you, Derek. We do spend a lot of time putting together those course notes, making sure that something you can use, something that you give you a leg up when you're ready to go into the exam. And I'm glad they were helpful for you as well. That's great to hear. Congratulations on your Security Plus. Now go get that security job. Whatever it is you're doing with security, go do that. My last big job working for someone else was all security as a systems engineer for 7 years for a firewall company. So I loved it. I thought security was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. It takes a while to kind of get to that point. You have to know operating systems. You have to know networks. You have to know a lot about a lot. But when you get into it, sure helps if you are familiar with what's going on. Sure can help you anyway. So hopefully that can work with you as well. Maybe that will get you there. We'll have to see if that will make sense for what you're doing. Let's see if we can do some more answers. Let another couple answers come in. Let's see how we did with this question. The question asked, a firewall is blocking all traffic using TCP 3389. Which OSI layer is associated with this process? Is it layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, or layer 7? And if we look at our results, we have 55% of us that said layer 4. So just over the midpoint. So I'll take it. We'll go with that right now. Is it a lie or is it the truth? Layer 3 got 25% of the vote. Layer 7 got 12% of the vote. 6% of you said layer 2, 1% said layer 1. So this is where you would run into these questions and trying to figure out the details of it. As always, of course, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Because we are dealing with a TCP, we're dealing with a port number, and we're dealing with TCP or UDP, then we're dealing with layer 4, the transport layer. We're trying to get traffic sent inside of an IP packet from one side of the network to another. That's what we're trying to do. So this could be a next generation firewall. Could absolutely be a next generation firewall. That's only doing its evaluations at layer 4 of the OSI model. Normally when you have an OSI, you have a next generation firewall and it's TCP 3389. What would you be blocking with your next generation firewall? There's a bonus question. Firewalls also operate at layer 3 as well. And at layer 4, next generation firewalls at layer 7. So if this was a next generation firewall, it would say a next generation firewall is blocking all traffic. Doing what? Chat room says remote desktop. That's what it would be, RDP. TCP 3389 is the standard port for RDP. So if it was a next gen firewall, it would probably say that, which means our answer would be layer 7 because we're blocking it at the application layer. In this case, we're blocking it at the TCP layer. That is layer 4 transport layer. And that's why when you work through it, that is where you would really find all of these. Hopefully it's one that you run into and working through these. I think that's a pretty good option when you work through these firewall problems. You need to look, especially the OSI questions, find out what the topic is that they are focusing on. In this case, it was TCP port 3389. So you should, in your mind, figure out where TCP fits into the OSI model. And if you know that, you're going to do pretty well. That's where it's going to be. Layer 1 would be the physical layer. That's not what we're shooting for. Layer 2 would be kind of the MAC address blocking, MAC address functionality. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about TCP. Layer 3 would be IP addresses. It's not an IP address. It's a TCP port number, which means it would be layer 4. That's really the only option it would be. Hopefully you're familiar with these. When you get into the OSI, if you're not familiar with the OSI questions, make sure you become familiar with them. You might get at least an OSI question on your exam. Well, on the 008, it's the first thing on the exam objectives is OSI. They started off the 008 exam objectives with OSI. So they must think it's pretty important when you get into it. Let's do another question. See how we do with this one. This question asks, A network team needs to connect 2 buildings with gigabit Ethernet across a 200-meter distance. Which of the following would provide this connectivity? Would it be 1000 base SX, 10G base T, 100 base TX, 1000 base T, or 10G base ER? Wonder if it's going to be one of those. A network team needs to connect 2 buildings with gigabit Ethernet across a 200-meter distance. Which of the following would provide this connectivity? Would it be 1000 base SX, 10G base T, 100 base TX, 1000 base T, or 10G base ER? If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormester.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. professormester.com/QA and lock it in. It's got to be one of those. All of those are real. So if you ever get into dealing with the Ethernet standards, if you haven't read the Ethernet standards, they are gripping. I will tell you, I have read them, and you can download them for free. All of these are real Ethernet standards. So you have to know what the differences are. And in fact, all of those are on the exam objectives. So you have to know what all of them are there as well. In the 008 exam, I think added a couple more to the list. I guess they felt we didn't have enough on the current version of the exams. They added some more. So I'm even not even really giving you all of the ones on the 008 because technically this is still a 007 study group. By the time next month comes along, we might be shifting over to 008. We'll have to see. I usually will look at the landscape and see what's available and see if it really makes sense for people to start on that version. And then I'll kind of jump in on that version if that's what happens to be able to get there. So hopefully you're familiar with this. No hints in the chat room, no questions in the chat room. We'll figure it out. You can ask the question once we get to the answer part. Is the 008 more complicated than the 007? I don't think it is. I think it's very comparable. They're pretty similar in difficulty levels. There's a little bit more exam objectives in the 008, not a lot. I think there's a few more topics. Not a few. It's 100, I think, more topics, somewhere around there. We can look in the after show for the details of that. But I think that's a good example of, there's newer topologies, of course there's going to be newer things because we're 3 years later. I was talking in the pre-show just how much my computer has changed or not changed in 3 years and how the technology has changed in the marketplace in 3 years. It's remarkable how fast things are moving right now, given sort of the stagnation we've had over the last year. So we're not stopping. We're just continuing to add on these technologies. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, a network team needs to connect 2 buildings with gigabit Ethernet across a 200-meter distance. Which of the following would provide this connectivity? Is it 1000 base SX, 10G base T, 100 base TX, 1000 base T, and 10G base ER? We didn't come up with a majority on this one. We have 35% of you chose 1000 base SX. So if we had to choose a plurality, that would be the one we would choose. 27% said 1000 base T. 17% said 10G base ER. 13% said 10G base T. And 8% said 100 base TX. So we've got a few options here. This question was specifically about 2 important characteristics. 1, gigabit Ethernet. That's 1 gig Ethernet. And a 200-meter distance. Those are your challenges. As you're probably familiar, if you think back to the standards for copper Ethernet, whether it's running over Cat 5, Cat 6, or anything else, 100 meters is the maximum distance you can hope to get when you're dealing with copper. So the standard we need to choose needs to be something better than that because we have to go 200 meters. We have to go twice as far. So we know it's not going to be copper. We know it's going to be fiber. We also know it's going to be gigabit Ethernet or 1000 megabit and not any other speed. and we should have been able to figure that out based on these. The answer that you would have come up with for gigabit Ethernet over fiber, you would have had two options available. One is the 1000 base SX, the 1000 being 1000 megabits per second, or 1 gig. The base being baseband, because everything runs at the same frequency. And SX, if you had to abbreviate that, it's kind of the short range version of this. Gigabit Ethernet using probably infrared inside of the devices that you're using, usually over multi-mode fiber, although this specification I think does have a single mode option. But it runs somewhere around a maximum distance of 220 to 500 meters, depending on what type of fiber you're using. So that's a good choice. We could use that, 1000 base SX. You could also use 1000 base LX, although it would be a little bit overkill for 200 meters. This is gigabit Ethernet using laser beams. So you're really going quite a distance on this one. With multi-mode, you can go up to 550 meters. On single mode, you can go 5 kilometers. Probably don't need that. It's also more expensive than the short range because it goes farther. So our 1000 base SX would be the best fit. And indeed, answer A is 1000 base SX. 37% of you did choose that one. That is the right answer. That would get you there for what you're working through. There's also other options here. The other 1 gig option here is 1000 base T, which, if you recall, is gigabit Ethernet over copper, but it has a maximum distance in the standard of 100 meters, and we have to go 200 meters. So it would not be 1000 base T. There were 3 other options here. 100 base TX is also copper, so we know it's not going to be copper anyway, but this is 100 base TX, which means it's 100 megabits per second. It is not gigabit Ethernet, so that doesn't fit our requirements in this question. The other 2 answers are 10G base T and 10G base ER, which are 10 gig Ethernet technologies. Again, not what we wanted from the question. The question was gigabit Ethernet, not 10 gig Ethernet. So that's why 10G base T is the copper version of 10 gig connectivity. 10G base ER, an extended range version of 10 gig over fiber. Wouldn't be those either. The only one that fits is answer A, 1000 base SX. That is the one we were wanting. 38% of you got that one absolutely correct. That is what you would have there. If you are watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email with a digital signature that certifies that you were here and watching this, but you have to follow these instructions. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. That Contact Us link will open up a form. Put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put October 2021 Network Plus. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, 1000 base SX. The super secret code word is 1000 base SX. If you also want to put anything else in that message, I read through all of these. You're more than welcome to put anything else in there you would like. I like reading through them. And although I'm not able to respond back to all of them because I get so many, but I do read through everything you send, just so you're aware. Again, you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put October 2021 Network Plus. And on a line by itself in the body of the message, put the super secret code word of the month, 1000 base SX. That's super secret code word of the month. Yeah, you'll notice here there's a 1000 base T and there's a 100 base TX. Those are 2 different standards. There's also a 100 base T standard, but that's a different standard than the 100 base TX. They really confuse things a bit on the 100 megabit side between the T and the TX. But the TX is the one we commonly use. The T on 100 base TX uses 8 wires. It was never really used. I don't know that you could find any. I imagine you could, if you worked hard, you probably could find somewhere where somebody has created some infrastructure equipment that operates at 100 base T, but 100 base T effectively unused. But for that reason, we often will write 100 base T when we really mean 100 base TX because we're so used to writing 1000 base T. There is not a 1000 base TX. They realized that was such a bad idea, they didn't do it again. So that was good. Didn't do it again. Now, I know it's top of the hour. Let's get another question in, though, before we're done here today. Oh, before we go there, the Uplifting Investor, $5 Super Chat donation. Thank you very much. The investor says, we're just getting into studying for Network Plus. Should we focus on the 008? I'm brand new. Thanks for all your help. I mentioned this earlier in the study group, but you could almost go either direction right now. I still think there's so many more materials available for 007 that it's a better bet. But for those of you that are just so compelled, you have to do the new one. You can't help yourself. Even though you have less of a chance of passing, you got to do the 008. I can't get out of your way. And quite honestly, in about a month, it won't matter. Everything will be out. There'll be more books out. Well, not everything, but there'll be many more books out. There'll be many more training materials out. In about a month or two, you'll be able to do that. So that's what I think about both of those. Let's do another one. Last question of the first hour anyway. We'll fit another one into the mix. This question asks, which of the following would be most commonly associated with out-of-band management? Would it be an IPsec concentrator, a load balancer, a comm server, a repeater, or a patch panel? Which of the following would be most commonly associated with out-of-band management? Would it be an IPsec concentrator, a load balancer, a comm server, a repeater, or a patch panel? If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. And by the way, Mr. Uplifting Investor Person, thank you so much for the super chat. I don't think I thanked you. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate those. In fact, I turned on for all of my videos, super thanks. I don't know if you've seen that on YouTube, but if you're watching videos on YouTube, you can donate right there on the video. You can just add a thank you right to that. I don't require it, as you know. I think you watching the videos thanks enough. But if you want to help you even more, I just put that right there for you. So it would be in that view of things. Lock in your answer on this one. I like this question because I used to have to do this so often with out-of-band management. This question asks, which of the following would be most commonly associated with out-of-band management? Is it IPsec concentrator, load balancer, comm server, repeater, or patch panel? All of those things are in the exam objectives. We have to know what all these things do. This is another one of those where you do have to be familiar with the underlying operation of these things. So hopefully you're familiar with what each one of these does. If you go through this list, you're looking IPsec concentrator, I know what that does. Load balancer, I know what that does. Comm server, I know what that does. Repeater, I don't know what a repeater does. You may have to go back just to study up on what that thing happens to be. So all of these are real things, and you should know what they all are. They do all come from the exam objectives. And I think for the most part, all the questions we went through today effectively are covered in the 008 anyway. Should be another good reason for us to convert over next month, wouldn't it? Just to do 008 next month, since there's so much overlap. On the first month of these, I tend to do questions that are only from that exam, though. So maybe next month we'll do that, being able to work through them. Let's see how you did with this question that asked, which of the following would be most commonly associated with out-of-band management? Would it be IPsec concentrator, load balancer, comm server, repeater, or patch panel? And again, we're a little torn on this one. 27% said comm server, 23% said load balancer, 21% said IPsec concentrator, practically a three-way tie for first. 17% said repeater, and 11% said patch panel. We got no single digits on this one. That's how torn we are. So let's talk about out-of-band management. We need to circle back, don't we? So whenever you are making a configuration change to a router, a firewall, a switch, you probably use SSH. Let me SSH into the switch and make that change. There, we did it. Now, what happens if suddenly the network goes down to that remote site that has the switch and they say, you need to make the configuration change to that switch? Let me SSH in. Oh, wait, I can't because the network's down. How am I supposed to get to the switch to make the configuration change that would allow me to get the link back up and running. See the problem? We need some way to connect back to that device outside the scope, outside the bandwidth that we would normally use, out of band, that would allow us to connect to that device that does not use the existing network connections. Obviously, this is critical on most networks. You will almost always have a secondary out-of-band connection that you could use to connect to these devices that may be somewhere else. Most devices, switches, routers, firewalls, and other infrastructure devices have a separate interface on the front of them called a COM interface, a management interface, and some of them even say OOB, what they have written on them, an out-of-band connection. Sometimes this is serial, 9-pin serial, like the one you see here. Sometimes on newer systems, it's USB or even RJ45. This is not a loopback interface. This is another way that you could get into the configuration of this device that does not use the existing Ethernet network. So this is the way to do it. We'll talk about Facebook in a moment, how important out-of-band happens to be when we get to this. You would normally connect to this, and in the old days, you would connect to the out-of-band connection using a modem because you could dial in over an analog telephone line. Remember those? You would dial into a modem on the other side that would then be connected to this device over the serial link. So you could just dial in around your normal network and gain access to that infrastructure equipment. You can also do it a lot easier if you happen to have a COM server. In most environments where you have devices there, you never have one device. There's usually a switch. There's probably a router. Maybe it's a firewall and a router built into one. Maybe there's a server at that site. So instead of having 3 separate out-of-band connections to 3 separate devices, you can simply connect to a single COM server, and the COM server behind the scenes is connected to all 3 of those devices. So that becomes useful too. So you don't have to have 3 separate modems. You have one link into that site, and usually it puts a prompt on your screen that says, what do you want to connect to? You want to go to the switch? You want to go to the router? Or do you want to go to the server? I want to go to the switch. Okay, log in. Present you with the login page. Very useful tool to have. Sometimes you'll see it referred to as a console router, COM server. That's what you would use for out-of-band connectivity. This is what Facebook ran into, as people in the chat room mentioning this week. Daniel in the chat room said, didn't that happen to Facebook this week? As many of you recall, those of you in the know, Facebook went down. You know this because your mom called and said, why is Facebook down? I don't know, Mom. Let me find out. That's why. Because they created a problem, apparently, with their BGP configuration. So BGP suddenly went away. Facebook effectively took themselves off the internet. They erased themselves from the internet. And no router on the internet knew how to route to Facebook. That's why they were down. Obviously, that's a pretty bad thing. So what Facebook said was, no problem, I'll get back in the router and I'll fix the BGP configuration. Let me SSH in. Oh, wait, we're not on the internet anymore. We can't SSH into our own routers. So no problem, we'll dial in. We'll use our out-of-band connection to dial into the device. Oops, we don't have one. We don't have an out-of-band connection into this. We're going to have to go to the data center, to the device itself, and physically plug our laptop into this COM port right here. So they had to get into the building, except they got to the building and nobody was there because we're all working from home. That was the story that we heard anyway, is that they were challenged at getting the correct credentials and people to allow them access into their own facility or the facility that they were co-locating with, which probably was what was going on. Which they got there and said, all right, I have to go in and fix this because we're down. They're like, who are you? We don't have you on a list. You're not allowed in here. You can't come in and just start making changes, get access. You don't have access to that. So they had to find the right people. They had to find the guy with the key, effectively. They had to find the right person to let them in the building into the the area that had this device so they could physically plug into this port that's on your screen, make the configuration change. It was probably a 30-second change to the router. Nope, fix BGP, go. And boom, probably came right back up. Instead, it lasted for hours. So this was, there were other problems with it. I agree. I heard the stories that the card system that allowed them access was focused on connecting back to Facebook to confirm the access, except Facebook had been removed from the internet, so it couldn't do the authentication. There were a lot of stories like this. But the same problem applies if they had only had a modem. They had only had a comm server and a DSL line, an ISDN line, an analog modem on the backside. Someone could have dialed in, gone click, 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 and they would have been back up and running in 5 minutes. Probably. So out of band can be really, 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 really useful. If you don't have an out of band connection to devices that are on your network and you're supporting a remote site, you might want to do a little research and see, maybe we could find an out-of-band connection that we could put on. It might save us someday. In fact, it probably will save you someday. Have a look at that. If you did answer, by the way, there were other answers here. Comm server was the right answer because that would allow you to dial into that one device and then bounce around to routers, switches, servers, and other devices. That's the way to do it, the comm server. And these days, the out-of-band that we're using is cellular technology. We're not using analog modems anymore. We're simply putting onto those a 3G, 4G, or 5G connection, and we're going in through the cellular lines to connect to the comm server. That's the easy way to do it. I've also seen people use DSL and cable modem as well. Those generally are the things we're using these days. That gives you access to the comm server that then allows you to get access to those other pieces. So that's what you would use these days. That's the modern version of the analog modem, is your cellular connection. You've also got other options in here. IPsec Concentrator allows you to set up, obviously, a VPN tunnel from one site to the other. That doesn't help you if the network is down. You VPN tunnel to nowhere. You can't VPN tunnel to Facebook because Facebook wasn't there anymore. Not the option we would use. Load balancer would allow your systems to split the load across multiple servers. Again, doesn't help you if the network goes down, and doesn't help you at all for out-of-band management. A repeater is a great tool to be able to take a signal, regenerate that signal, repeat it effectively, and send it on its way. But we don't have a signal issue. We don't have a distance problem. We have a problem getting to these devices when the network isn't available. A repeater's not going to help you with that. And finally, Patch Panel, which certainly helps in your closet to be able to do moves, adds, and changes very easily and move cables around and manage the process, but does not help you for out-of-band management. The answer here that would most commonly be associated with out-of-band management is answer C, the comm server. That's what we would choose to be able to have that. All of these terms you've seen today, even the ones we didn't talk about, are from the exam objectives. Make sure you download these objectives. They are at professormesser.com/objectives. There's a link there that will take you over to the CompTIA website where you can download these objectives. They are free. I think you can see here this is the 007. The first thing on there is ports and protocols. They throw it at you. You can see every port and every protocol you need to know. Absolutely there. Very useful. Make sure that you get your hands on those. They're free, and they'll tell you everything you need to know for the exam. They should be the first thing you read through and the last thing you check before taking your exam. We do one of these study groups every month. Next month, I've got one scheduled. When's the next one scheduled for? The 10th of November is when the next one is scheduled for. I have A+ on the 2nd of November and the 4th, Network Plus on the 10th, and Security Plus on the 17th. I also have a Security Plus study group next week, next Wednesday, week and a day. That's when it's scheduled currently. I think that's pretty well locked in. I don't have anything else, but these can change all the time. The ones for this month changed. The one for today, the Network Plus, changed from when I said it was going to be, just because that's the way it goes sometimes. So always check back with the calendar. You can always find out when the next live event is going to be by going to professormesser.com/calendar. It's a great way to do it, because the instant I know it's changed, I change it in the calendar. So the moment I change it there, everybody knows. And it's the best place to go when you're trying to figure out, when is the next event going to be? What is going on? What is he doing? I don't know that you can answer all of those, but a lot of those can be answered at the calendar, professormesser.com/calendar. We're done with our Q&A, but stick around. We're done with the Q&A that I ask. Now we'll do the Q&A that you ask and be able to have that there. We've got plenty to do in the after show. Stick around for that. In the meantime, you can check out our success bundle at professormesser.com/netsuccess. Of course, we have our discounted vouchers. Never pay full price for your vouchers. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers and get a discounted voucher and my free exam hacks ebook. And you can follow us on the YouTube, on the Twitter, on the Instagram. Just type in professormesser.com/ the name of the place, /YouTube, /Twitter, /Instagram, /LinkedIn, /Discord. You'll find me. It's all there. We'd love to have you join us. There's so much to do there. Stick around. We got another hour of Q&A ahead. I'll open up the phone lines in just a moment. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. Thanks for joining us on the first hour. And we will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Okay, let's see if I can get my phone lines up and running. I need to get my Skype running. One moment, please. I need to get these other things running. I need to move and change a few things on my screen over here. Thank you for bearing with me. Let's get this running on this side. There's someone was asking earlier, or was mentioning earlier, that I reply to my own emails. I don't know if you've looked around. Nobody else is here. There's nobody else in the room to be able to do that. So of course that's going to be the case. Oh, now have I done this? I think I'm okay. Let's call in to my own show, shall we? If you'll bear with me just a moment. Oh, I'm already there. I just need to connect. I'm way ahead of myself. If you'll bear with me a second, it's going to make some noises here. And then the nice person says, there we go. And I type in a few things on my side, and the nice lady says,
enter your 6-digit PIN.
Well, I will do that if I can remember it. There it is.
Welcome, Professor Messer.
Thanks, nice lady. Well, that means that you can join us as well. Let me bring up the correct graphic, though. Now that we're talking about this, I have to make sure we have the right graphic in place, or otherwise you won't know where to go to do any of this. If you're in the continental United States, it's a toll-free number, 855-785-RJ45. West of the Rockies, 855-785-7545. We'll get you the phone lines. I will also take questions from the chat room. So if you put your questions in there, hopefully I can see that go by. I do pretty well with those. We'll make sure that I can see those, and I'll answer questions from the chat room. If you are outside the continental U.S., it's also a free call if you use Skype, because you can use Skype with no Skype minutes if you're calling a toll-free number in the United States. I pick up the tab, but you have to put a +1 at the beginning. So on Skype, +1, 855-785-7545. And you can sit in that queue of calls coming in. I see a number of you already there and calling in. And a few we need to talk to because we've talked to them before. So we need to see what's going on in their world. Let's jump to the calls. We'll start with the 240 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Oliver calling from Maryland.
Hello, Oliver. How are you? Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yeah, so I have one question. I was applying to some entry-level IT jobs, and I noticed that several descriptions mention the Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager. I did some research so far, and in a nutshell, it's a very useful tool in essentially managing Windows devices.
Yeah.
So I just want to ask what you know about this particular application, and perhaps if you know any interesting things that it can do that many people may not know.
Oh yeah, the endpoint management is a huge part of the industry. It kind of started off on the security side, and then companies have done a very good job at unified endpoint management. It usually involves putting some type of server or service on a system and then managing it with a central console. Microsoft has their own flavor of this, which is the Microsoft Endpoint Manager. I think I've got a shot of the Microsoft website. There we go. Where they can manage their desktops, maintain the software that's running on them, make sure they're all got the latest patches, make sure their data is secure. You can push down a lot of different policies onto these systems and being able to take them wherever you happen to go. It is a powerful tool regardless of whose package you are using. They have a pretty good name in the industry with their endpoint management, but they always have. Microsoft's Active Directory, for example, is probably the ultimate endpoint management. And this is where I think most people, when they are getting into desktop administration, especially operating systems on the desktop, you need some type of endpoint manager to be able to configure all of these. Yeah, the Microsoft has changed their flavors of this through the years. But the current version is that Microsoft Configuration Manager. It's this unified platform. They also have Microsoft Intune. They have a separate Intune console that gives them the cloud management for their Windows systems. A very useful set of tools if you're into that desktop management side of things, and these days practically required. We learned very quickly when everybody went home with their laptops that it became very difficult to manage those devices. They were no longer sitting at their desk in a building along with everyone else. We needed a better way to manage those systems, and it's these endpoint managers that allow you to do that. While Microsoft's Windows 11 is now out, of course, they've got a lot more to work through on the endpoint management side. It's a pretty useful and pretty important part of desktop management. And if you're managing any reasonably large group of endpoints, you're going to need some type of endpoint management system. Hopefully that gives you some perspective on that, Oliver.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Absolutely.
One more question.
Sure.
Actually, not really a question. Taking my CompTIA Network Plus exam this Friday, so just hoping to get that passed. So wish me luck, and I'll see you next month.
Best luck. We can't wait to hear how that goes. Thanks for calling. And if you or anyone else is planning to take your exam here shortly, I mentioned earlier about the value of the exam objectives. Let me give you one more run through with that. I'm going to bring up the objectives on my side for the 008, just so you can kind of get a feel for those. Because I don't know if everyone really understands the detail of what's contained in these exam objectives. This is, for example, this is the 008 objectives. Section 1.0, Networking Fundamentals. Section 1.1, Compare and Contrast the Open Systems Interconnection, OSI, Model Layers, and Encapsulation Concepts. And of course, they go through all 7 layers: physical, data link, network, transport, session, presentation, application. Then they mention data encapsulation and decapsulation within the OSI model context, especially as it associated with Ethernet header, IP header, TCP and UDP headers, TCP flags, a payload, and a maximum transmission unit. So we need to know what all those things are to be able to prepare ourselves for this exam. So if you are planning for your exam, the exam objectives told you everything you need to know about OSI and about encapsulation and decapsulation. Make sure you use those. They're a great checklist. So use that as your checklist if this is the final week. And it will tell you, if you go through this, you realize, I really haven't spent much time on payload. Let me go read up more on what the payload piece of it is. That's another one that you'll be able to check off. And you can kind of use this to find out where your gaps might be prior to walking into the exam. I think that'd be pretty useful and being able to work through it. Let's go back to the phones. We'll talk to the 531 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Professor Messer. How are you doing today?
Thanks for calling. Doing great. What can we do for you?
Hey, so at least for my general question, when it comes to IT certificates such as Network Plus and all, could that be used to go to work outside the United States? Like, for instance, if I want to go to Norway and such. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it certainly could. First, let's kind of look at the value of certifications in general, because this is one where I think people often work through challenges with what should we do from a certification perspective? What value does it really provide? The first thing I think that a certification provides to you is your own personal knowledge about how this technology works. So whether you take the exam, whether you pass the exam or not, I think going through the process of learning a certification or the skills you need to pass the certification first gives you some practical knowledge you can use in your career. So there's already kind of a self-made piece of it. Now, the problem, of course, is that people in Norway have no idea what your personal knowledge is, and people even in the US, they don't know what you know. So the real value of a certification is to prove to other people who have never met you before, who knew nothing about you, that you have what could be considered a sort of a baseline knowledge of a certain area of expertise. So for Network Plus, somebody who reads the Network Plus exam objectives, they go through this list, they think, okay, well, if you pass the exam with these objectives, you have a pretty good idea, a good scope and knowledge of all of these things, and you're proving that to other people. In the United States, I think we do a great job of using certifications as a baseline knowledge. We have so many jobs, we have so many people, it's a shortcut. Now, obviously, in your talking with the prospective employer, good employers are going to start asking you technical questions anyway. They're going to see if you really know your stuff. So the certification is not to replace your personal knowledge. It's not to replace any practical experience. Certifications stand on their own as a baseline. And I would imagine most employers are going to ask you about this. In the US, we do a great job of using that baseline. And we'll put in the job description, you need a Network Plus knowledge or better. Network Plus preferred. It would be great if you had Network Plus certification. They'll tell you in the job description. Outside of the US, it varies greatly as to whether an organization cares or not. Because the value of a certification, once it's outside the scope of your personal knowledge, you're probably getting this cert to get a job or get a better job. So it's important that the person hiring you knows that the value of the certification is there. If the employer has no idea what the value of a cert happens to be, then that doesn't help you very much. You tell somebody, but I have a Network Plus cert, and they'll say, I don't know what that is, so that doesn't mean anything to me. That's not what you want to be, not the situation you want to be in. And a lot of these certifications are very geographic in that way. For example, just in the United States, if you live in the DC area, Washington, DC, Virginia, Maryland, that area of the United States, Security Plus is an important certification to have. Many employers up there are asking specifically for Security Plus. They don't really care if you have the Network Plus or A Plus. They want you to have Security Plus as your first thing out of the gate. If you go to Minneapolis and you're trying to get a job there, you may not find the same emphasis in Security Plus in Minneapolis because they have a different set of employers. They have a different set of requirements. In fact, you might see more A Plus and Network Plus in Minneapolis than you do Security Plus for those types of jobs. So the same thing will apply internationally too. Some countries are very familiar and very knowledgeable of certain certifications and will ask for them. Other countries don't deal with it at all. And it really just depends on what the employers in that particular country are looking for. If they don't know the cert, you're going to have to pull on some of those other elements that I mentioned. I have that video on how to get a job in IT with no experience. And I say you need formal education, you need certifications, you need some practical experience, and you need to know somebody who works there. Well, if they're not taking your certification, that comes off your list. Now you're down to 3 elements. So you better have a very good formal education, a very good practical experience, and maybe know somebody really well in the organization. You'll have to lean on some of those other elements. So it will vary, but sometimes you'll find those employers in different countries that are absolutely tuned into these certs. They know what they're looking for, and they'll tell you in the job description.
Got it. Because beforehand, I wasn't sure if CompTIA itself was just like an international sort of certificates exam, or if that basically only applied to like the U.S.
No, it certainly is very popular in the US. In other parts of the world, popularity tends to go up and down, I've seen. There used to be in the UK a huge emphasis in the CompTIA certifications and other kinds. I've seen in the last numbers of years that has come down a little bit. I'm starting to see it kind of go back up again. So it's a little more cyclical in those parts of the world. But absolutely, it's a worldwide certification. It is recognized worldwide. And it's really up to the employer as to how valuable it might be in any particular scenario.
Yep, it's like you said, it all depends on the employer, really.
It all depends on the employer.
More than that.
So true.
Yeah. Yeah, but thank you for the answer. At least provided a bit more context as to what I'm preparing for. I appreciate it, man.
Best of luck. Thanks for calling, and a great question, too. It's one of those things that it will depend, even within the U.S., the value of a certification depends on what you're going to be doing with it. Are you going to be are you using it because an employer wants you to have it? That's valuable. Are you getting the certification because you need to know this raw material, this raw technology? That's valuable. So it just depends. It just depends. Yeah, the CompTIA exams were more popular in the UK 10 years ago than they were today. If I had to kind of spec it out, they're still very popular in the UK, but it was a different scenario with technology jobs, getting apprenticeships. It was a different system, and there was much more of an emphasis on the CompTIA side. But they're certainly there. They continue to be there. One of the things that I run into taking these exams is I can't talk. You can't put your hand over your mouth like this. So can I watch this? Can I do this? No, you can't. You can't talk. You can't put your hand over your mouth. Because if you have your hand over your mouth, you could be saying something into a microphone and you could be talking. So they don't allow it. They also don't allow you to have water or anything else unless it's in a clear glass. So I've had that happen before as well. Whenever you start getting into the exams and the things that people are doing with it, it does come in handy to know all the rules. And I highly recommend that you go back to all of those rules. I think whenever I start trying to figure it out, it takes a lot of reading and effort. If you can just read through them and know what it happens to be. So maybe that will work for you too. Hopefully it will. Might help you with some of your exams. Maybe you get an extra point or two. And that beep means that I'm calling the 313 area code. Hey, caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from? I hear myself.
Hey, I'm Will.
Hey, Will. What can we do for you?
I wasn't expecting it to be so quick.
Pick you right up there.
Yeah, I got lucky, I guess. So, all right. I haven't had a chance to look at the 07 version compared to the 08 much lately, okay? And I did try and take it once before, and I got through your stuff and a couple other people that were out there. Is there any real big variance in all this? And how would any of the stuff that I'm taking through school now help me? Right? I'm going to have the bachelor's in the end because I always use the OSI model as that acronym, please do not throw sausage pizza away, which is a great way to do it. So, I mean, can you give me a little more insight? And I one last thing, I know I'm throwing a bunch of them at you once. Have you ever considered doing anything with the Microsoft Azure stuff to help people get ready for that?
So let's start with the changes in the N10-007 and the N10-008. They are slightly, I think they're slightly different, but they are significantly different. I'm going to pull up the exam objectives for the 008 just so everybody else can kind of follow along with what I'm saying. Whenever I get a new exam, I write down all of the exam objectives. I determine if they are new or old. So for example, you mentioned the OSI model. The OSI model is the first section of the 008. It correlates back to the N10-007 in section 1.2, and I make a note of that. But the second part where it deals with data encapsulation and decapsulation is all new to the 008. And I always make a note of what things are new and what things are old. So this allows me to count up all of the objectives for the 007. In the 007, there were 499 exam objectives. If you counted them all up, which I do, 499. Let's just say 500. 500 objectives. On the 008, 588. So not a huge difference in total number of things that you have to remember. Slightly more, but not incredibly large in comparison. Certainly not compared to the things they did with Security Plus. Of that 588, 235 of those are brand new. So that's like half of the 007 objectives, almost half of them are new. When you look at the total number of the 008, it's 40%, 40. 40% of the exam deals with new topics. Now, that's a pretty big number in the world of objectives. Usually, we deal with 20 to 25% are different. On the latest Security Plus, half of the exam was new, and the exam was 50% larger. So it was a lot of new content. On this one, quite a bit is new, 40%. If you studied 007 materials and then you walked in to take the 008 exam, you'd probably fail because 40% of it's brand new that you've never seen before. So that's why I tell people, always study from materials that match the version of the exam you're going to take. If you've already studied in the past for the 007, even though you didn't pass that one, and you're planning to take the exam again, take the 007 again. It's going to be around until June. You've already studied all of that material. And whether you pass the 007 exam or the 008 exam, you get exactly the same certification. You get the Network Plus certification. You don't get the 007 certification. You don't get the 008 certification. You get Network Plus. So the end game is exactly the same. So that's why I tell people, don't shift gears in the middle. Don't switch from one to the other in the middle without some really, really, really good reason for doing that, because it doesn't gain you anything. If anything, you'd be moving backwards. Keep studying your 007, take the 007 exam, and I think you'll do fine. Did we lose you? Are we muted?
Yeah, we're still here. We're still here. No, we're still here.
Does that make sense? Does that help a little bit with scope anyway?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my thing is that I'm not buying. So I'm not saying I'm not buying because you do a great job. What I'm looking at is that in my situation, the VA is paying for it.
Okay.
So when I originally did it, right, they paid for 07, right, and we're coming up at the end. So I'm kind of stuck with, okay, you got to learn the new stuff. That's my big thing. So that's kind of where we're at with that. And I picked up a lot of things in the last couple of years, but there's a lot of different questions I could go over. But yeah, the one I keep seeing that keeps popping up is a lot of the cloud-based stuff. That's why I asked you about the Microsoft stuff for like Azure. If you were going to explore, putting on courses for anything like that, because I find a bunch of stuff on Udemy, but it doesn't seem to help, and it's not really well explained the way that you're putting stuff down. So I don't know if that's something you're going to do in the future or not.
It's one of those things where I want to do something else. When we finish up Network Plus, which is going to be here in the next few weeks, Network Plus will be done. All the videos will be shot, edited, they'll be posted, and that'll sort of be behind us. CompTIA is coming out with an updated A+ at the beginning of the year. So I will be spending a lot of time getting the A+ updated. So it'll be a few months getting that particular 2 courses updated. Once that's done, I would have just finished updating Security Plus, Network Plus, and A+, which means I have a couple of years before I would have to refresh those. So it's a perfect opportunity to add on to the list of things on my site, and I do plan on doing that. The real question, though, is what is it going to be? And I have a big list. I've looked at Azure is certainly popular. AWS, also very popular. Red Hat, Linux, very popular. Cisco CCNA, super popular. So my goal is to kind of go outside the scope of CompTIA and maybe have something that's not CompTIA related, but I'm not married to that either. It might be a CompTIA course, but it's so far away. We're talking 6 to 9 months from now that I just don't have an answer, because if I answered you now, it's probably going to change in 9 months. So I don't know yet, or else I'd be able to tell you. And for me, it changes every day. So there's a lot of great options. It's one of those where I can't lose no matter what I choose. I just have to figure out which one of those it's going to be.
Right. The other thing is, you mentioned Security Plus earlier being big in the DCA area in the federal space. What's even bigger than that is the CISSP. If you have that, you're like a god to them. I don't. These were the words from a hiring manager that I know that is based out of Fort Rucker, Alabama.
The CISSP is, in the security world, it's considered to be the gold standard. Not only do you have to pass a certification exam to earn the CISSP, and it is a certification exam that spans many, many different domains. You have to be very knowledgeable in IT security to be able to pass that exam. But it also requires you to have a certain number of years of experience in security. So there's a practical gatekeeping they do that requires you to have already had a job. So you can't get the CISSP unless you've been doing this for a while. And I think that's why a number of people, recruiters and employers, look at the CISSP as being something that is very useful for people to have, because you would have had to have practical experience in the industry and have a validated exam that you have passed. That's a good 1-2 punch. And so I would agree, just from the work that I used to do in IT with many, many, many different companies, they love the CISSP probably for that reason.
Yeah, no, I have the opportunity because I meet a couple of different domains for like the ethical hacking and CISSP. Due to my prior experience, I got 10 years law enforcement experience. So some of the security aspects, a lot of that crosses over. So,
yep. And
it's actually offered through the school that I'm going to.
Oh, great.
So it's something that, I have the opportunity to do, so I'm willing to do that. But I don't want to keep you all day. We could probably talk shop all day, but you have things that you want to do, and there are other people that are being kind enough to wait behind me. So thank you for all the information. You have a great day.
Best of luck. I appreciate the call. You've got a good situation that you're in, because you can do the 007 or 008. Fantastic. That's a great choice. Either one of those is going to be good. And if you shift gears to the 008, you don't have to restart. You just have to add on the things that are new. And those other things people want, the cloud-based technologies, more networking technologies, and ultimately the CISSP, a gold standard. It's what a lot of people love to see. So you can't go wrong. All of those things are good. Let's go back to the phones. The 646 area code. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from?
Hi, this is Sam from New York.
Hey, Sam. What can we do for you?
So I was just wondering, do you think realistically 43 might be a little too late to start in IT and cybersecurity?
Oh, I hope not. I'd be in big trouble. The good thing is that the computers and networks have no idea how old you are. So that part's good. The whole problem you run into when, and I get this question a lot from people that are moving from one type of career to another. We've seen a lot of that recently, or people that have suddenly wanted to move into a particular part of IT later on in their career, is there's 2 or 3 different things to worry about. One, obviously, is when you move from one type of job to another. Let's say you were working in one type of industry and now you're shifting gears and wanting to start in IT. Well, at our old age, we have tended to work in that industry for a little bit of time, and we have earned a little bit of seniority in whatever we happen to be doing, and that generally comes with a little bit of an increase in pay. So we're at a certain pay that we're accustomed to. When we shift gears over to IT, well, now you're at the bottom of the totem pole again. Now you're having to prove yourself, and that usually means that you're at an entry level making money. Now, one good thing is that I would hope and I would think, and maybe this is true or not, that when you are a bit more mature, that you can be a little more self-directed. I know that when I was a little bit older, I was a little bit better with directing myself than I was when I was just out of college. I think as when you're a kid, you're like, woo, let's go see the world. And then you realize, wait, I have a mortgage. I have a family. I have things I have to do. So you're a little more serious when you have some of those responsibilities on top of you. So I think if you were shifting gears into IT, hopefully that responsibility that you bring can move you up a little faster within the ranks than perhaps if you were younger. I don't know that that's always the case, but I would imagine that it is. The other thing you're going to run into, and this is just sort of a reality of humans in general, is that the ageism is a thing. People will look at you and say, oh, you're going to come work at a help desk, but you're so old for a help desk. Everybody at the help desk is in their 20s. And that's where you sort of have to leverage some of these things you've already done. And by that, I mean, you probably have friends, associates, relatives, people you've worked with in the past, or maybe people within your existing company who are in IT. And if you can get with them and ask them directly, hey, you have a job you can put me in. I want to start at the bottom. I want to work my way through IT. In a year, I want to be doing, servers and networks. I'm hard pressed to move up quickly. If you can find someone who knows you or someone who would be willing to give you that chance without having to fight through the issues associated with your age, it certainly gives you a much better advantage of getting into the industry and working that direction. And I think that if we've been around for a while, hopefully you have a pretty good LinkedIn. Hopefully you know a lot of people in your church, in an organization you work with, friends that you just know from where you work now. Use those connections. Talk to them. Ask people that you've never even thought of asking before, hey, do you know anybody who works in IT? Do you know somebody who's looking for someone to start? I want to shift gears here. And try to make those connections. I think of the 4 things that you bring to the table, your formal education, your certifications, your practical experience, and people you know, it may be that people you know is actually more valuable than any of those other things. In some cases, I would say that's probably true. So it's never, age is not an issue. Age is never going to stop you. I'm kind of old. I know I look like just a spring chicken, but I'm kind of an old guy. So if I can still do this and keep up with everything and still understand the technologies and still keep learning things every day, then anybody can do this. It's just a matter of putting yourself into the right position financially, with the job requirements and everything else you need to succeed. And once you put those in place, there's nowhere to go but up.
Great. Yeah, I was mainly, speaking about the ageism, like recruiters, if they're not really eager to start someone in a network admin or a security SOC analyst or something,
I would think probably recruiters are the least of your concerns because they just want to fill a slot so they can get their commission. And they're more than happy to fit you in there if they can find a good fit. The problem is getting that hiring manager to hire you. And that's where you kind of need to leverage people you know, relationships you already have, right, and skip over the ageism part and just go straight to, I'm going to work hard for you and I'm going to move up fast. And if you give me a chance, we're going to take this thing forward.
Great. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Best of luck, Sam. It's a real challenge. And if you've never been in this situation before, I think I was very lucky. The last position I got in the industry working for a third party, working for someone else, was that systems engineering job working for a next generation firewall company. I started working for them. Let me think back now. I was in my 40s. So I'd moved up through the industry. I'd been a systems engineer for quite some time, but it was probably the perfect time to get in because I had the experience, I had the knowledge, and I was young enough that I could hop on a plane and just keep go, 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 go. I mean, I was working for a startup. It was first thing in the morning till last thing at night. You were running, you were gunning, you were hopping on a plane, you were going to visit somebody, you were dragging equipment, you were plugging it in, you were calling people on the phone, you were going to the next one. There was a lot physically that we had to do. And I don't know if they would have hired me today. They'd look at me and go, you can't even, I can't expect you to get up and work, from 8 in the morning till midnight and do the next thing every other day. And they're probably true. That's probably right. I don't know. I think I could do it. But it would pass through their minds. And that's what we're trying to avoid, is having people think that way. Really a challenge. And that's why I say skip over all of that. Find someone you know, and then you don't have to worry about it. And in this particular case, and maybe this was true, every job I've ever had in the industry, except for the very first one, I've had about 15 different titles in different jobs in the industry, working for 5 or 6, maybe 7 different companies. And every job I got after that first one, I knew someone who worked there. I think that speaks pretty well to the value of that. So if you don't know anyone, go meet some people. Go to a trade show, go to a Cisco user group meeting, go to a Microsoft user group meeting, go meet the people in your area. This is the whole idea of building the number of people you know on LinkedIn, and ask people, hey, it was great to meet you. Can I add you to my LinkedIn? Like, oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, if you tell people I'm looking for a job, they will probably ask you for your resume, because they can turn it into their HR, and if they hire you, they get a finder's fee. So I have a lot of people I used to work with that are resume hounds. They will ask everybody for their resume. Oh, can you send me your resume? Send me your resume. Oh, you're interested in that? Send me your resume. We got some jobs there. Send me your resume. I'll put your name in. And they do. And they just send the resume in. And they're constantly getting these job finder's fees on their paycheck. Beautiful. Rock on. That's what it's there for. Why wouldn't you? So you can do the same thing. Build that LinkedIn, go to the user group meetings, go meet some people, ask family, friends, people in other organizations that you're a part of. It's really important that you build this group of people. You don't have to spend the weekends with them. Get them on your LinkedIn. Keep track of what they're doing. Send them a note from time to time. It's very valuable. And will help you throughout your entire career. Let's do another one. Florida Connection, 813 area code. Hey, caller, which name are you calling from?
John Kemp from Tampa.
Hey, John, how are you? Haven't talked to you in a while. What can we do for you?
Excellent. You had a caller earlier that was asking about certs for working overseas, and I had a conversation with somebody who works pretty much exclusively overseas.
Oh.
And I said, well, what about like something like pen testing? And he said, Pen Test Plus is coming up, but he said overseas the certification they want to see you have is Crest.
Okay.
That's what it's called.
Yep.
And he said at least in Europe, that's what they want is Crest. And then he was talking about another one. I guess we have something called Idol.
Yes.
I think that's a management type certification.
The IT Infrastructure Library, absolutely.
Yeah, and he was saying they don't want that one; they want Prince instead.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting that they've gone off on their own path with that. But as far as a question I had for myself, after I passed this Network Plus, I've been looking at comments people are saying on Reddit, and it seems like everybody's trying to bang out all three, the A+, N+, S+, before going to work. Because, if you're working full-time for somebody after passing the M+, I mean, it's kind of like, when are you going to have the time to actually mow through all that. It seems like it would take you forever before you ever got through that final base certification.
I would think so. And I do see, I see that as a trend as well. I see a lot of people that want to do those three as what they put on the base of their resume. And I think it's because I would imagine it is because a lot of employers are either asking for one or more of those. And as I mentioned, in certain parts of the country, Security Plus is the primary one. In other parts of the country, A Plus is more interesting. Other employers may want you to have Network Plus. And I think a lot of people think if I have all three of these, then I'm covered. I have whatever they're asking for. I can show them I have that thing. I think a lot of people may have a misunderstanding, though, of the value of a certification. Because I tell people all the time, just because you have a cert doesn't mean you're going to get a job. You're going to need more than just a certification. Although it's very nice to show someone I've worked hard at getting A Plus, Network Plus, Security Plus. It certainly speaks to what I could bring to your organization and the things I could learn here. Just set me loose and I'll go. And I agree with you that once you get a job, trying to get more certifications is a struggle. It's a challenge because you can't do it on company time. It's after hours. It's at home. You're reading for an hour or two every night. You're working on a machine. You're doing other work. It's very difficult to make that happen. But I would agree that triplicate of A Plus, Network Plus, and Security Plus is probably the most popular, unless you're in a scenario like Washington, D.C., where all they care about is Network Plus. They don't or Security Plus. They don't care that you have Network Plus. They don't care that you have A Plus necessarily, but you have to have Security Plus. There's no getting around it. You must have Security Plus. Others are good. Security Plus you have to have. And then you do get into some niche scenarios like the one you mentioned, IDOL, the IT Infrastructure Library, and Prince. You know, in this world that we live in, we can't all come up with the same thing. All of us has to kind of do something different. So Europe will do one thing, the US will do another thing. Japan will do one thing, the Europe will do another thing. There's just, it's sort of the human nature. I guess we do what makes sense for us. But they're all sort of very similar. IT Infrastructure Library. I'm of the personal opinion that someone who is technical doesn't need to know IDOL at this time. And I understand why some managers think they should. Those managers just so happen to be wrong. There's no reason someone in your help desk needs to be IDOL certified. But there's a lot of things I did in corporate America that I didn't need to do, that had nothing to do with my day-to-day job. But someone at a management level felt it was important for me to do that. And the reality is they're the ones doing my annual evaluation. If they think it's important, I think it's important too. So I'm going to do that. Does it help me day-to-day? Probably not, but that's not my decision. They're the ones who are doing this. They're the ones telling me to do it. My job is to make them happy. That, by the way, that is your number one job description, is to make your boss happy. Because if your boss is happy, then you will get a good annual review and you will get more money every year and you will be happy. See how that works? Don't fight them. You need to join them and just do whatever they tell you to do. And if you don't like that, you can always go somewhere else. That's the beauty of IT. We are never locked into a job in IT. There's plenty of jobs out there. You just have to find the one with the right combination of things. And I think if someone wants you to have the ITIL, ITIL is what that is, the IT Infrastructure Library, then you go get it. Is it going to help you? Nope. Not even. You're better off learning A Plus, Network Plus, or Security Plus. But that's the nature of business in America. So we're gonna do what they tell us to do, whether it's good for us or not.
What about the Florida market? Which one would you say out of the three, the A plus, M plus, S plus, in the Florida market?
In the Florida market, we are definitely more segmented than the federal government. Although if you were in Tampa, Orlando area, in some ways Miami as well, There is a spotty amount of Department of Defense contractors in that area. Obviously, in Orlando is Lockheed Martin. You've got some others, third-party contractors and federal connections there. Those obviously are going to want Security Plus. But I would say in Florida, which I would consider from IT perspective, Jacksonville, Orlando, Tampa, and Fort Lauderdale, Miami area, and Palm Beach. Those are focused probably on A plus, Network plus, Security plus. Those are the kind of the normal three because it is mostly corporate, non-federal, non-government for the most part. And the government ones that are there, obviously Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach counties are very big governments, but they don't have the same emphasis in Security plus that the federal government has. And I think it's very specific to the job. You're going to have to look at the job postings, see what that particular employer is looking for that particular position. And they might want A plus for one position, Network plus for another, and Security plus for a third. They're a little more open for fitting the right certification in the right spot, at least in Florida.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Appreciate the call. Good to hear from you. Best of luck. I've spent a lot of time in the Florida market, so that's one I'm very, very familiar with. Most of my territories have ranged through the years, but they've always eventually come back to the Florida market, and I'm pretty familiar with that particular one. One of the things that I always run into when trying to figure out, do they want A plus? Do they want Network plus? Do they want Security plus? Is I'm going through all of the job posts. I mentioned this in my video, how to get a job in IT with no experience, is I always try to focus on what are they looking for? And I always tell people, make a spreadsheet in your area. Look at every job posting that is for help desk, PC, server, net, whatever it happens to be. And if you get to a point where you're trying to figure out what are people looking for, make a list. Go figure it out. I find a spreadsheet allows me to determine, do they want a formal education? What kind? Do they want the ability to have a certification? What certifications do they want? And unless you create that spreadsheet, you're never going to know. So I always tell people, write it down, figure it out. And then when you look at the spreadsheet, you now have a huge list that you could see a trend on. Wow, everybody here wants a Network plus, or everybody here wants Security plus. And then at least you have a direction of where to go from there. You know that, okay, everybody wants Security plus, I need to go get Security plus. Or you may find everybody wants A plus, I need to go get that one. That's what I would recommend doing. Whenever I start ever at least focusing on what do I get next, those are the questions people send me is, hey, what certification should I get? I don't know. What do employers want? What are you trying to do? Really, that's the question that you should ask is, what is your objective? What is your purpose? What are you trying to get to in being able to have this happen? And I think that's where I would focus too is, I want a job, an entry-level position in IT. Great. The people hiring for the entry-level jobs in IT, what do they want? Because whatever they want, that's the one you should have. So I think that's where everybody should focus. I can't answer the question for you. I can't be the one that determines what certification is going to work best for you. You might want to go into cloud. Okay, go get Azure, go get AWS. Do the employers in your area have more of AWS or do they have more Azure? Because that's kind of where we are right now. There are other cloud providers, of course, but those are two big ones. And most employers will have a preference. So see which preferences they're wanting and then go get that one. I think I have a similar thing with Linux. You run into this with Linux and working through it. And whenever I deal with Linux problems, it's across the board. It could be that people want Red Hat or do they want Linux Plus? Depends on the employer. You just don't know which one it's going to be. So I always tell people, see if you can work through that. See if you can find out what employers want. That's the one I think you should get. So it's not really my answer. It's really their answer. And so in the chat room, someone mentioning, AWS seems to be mentioned twice as much as Azure, unless you're in a particular part of the world like the federal government where Azure is just huge. And it's coming on strong, and maybe not necessarily just Azure, but the entire Microsoft cloud. You can do tons with Microsoft in the cloud, and that's kind of where those go. The challenge I think you'll run into in figuring out which cloud computing certification to get, or whatever your next certification happens to be, is just doing the research. It's kind of painful, but if you go through your favorite online job posting service, go to the Indeeds, the LinkedIn jobs, whatever it happens to be, that would be a good one to go through. You never know what those jobs might be and what they're doing there. So in the chat room, Andre says, just speaking of Florida, just applied to Hard Rock. They are headquartered out of Hollywood. And of course, they cover multiple spots in Florida. We don't get a lot of gaming in Florida, but their infrastructure for networking, security, and the things they're doing is remarkable. They're an old customer of mine back in the day too. And a kind of a fun place to work too, right? There's great opportunities like that all over Florida. Theme parks, recreation, cruise lines, all of those types of jobs are here in Florida, and they're kind of unique. You don't get a lot of cruise lines in other in Kansas. Those are in East Coast, West Coast kind of thing. So there's lots of great jobs. You just have to figure out what they want. So I would think all of them have been my customer at one time or another. I've gone to talk to them at one time or another and seen their data center and walk through and talk to their technical people. It really is a remarkable place. And if you're in Florida looking at jobs, you have lots of options available and lots of certifications you can choose from. And from the chat room, what are my inputs on cyber boot camps? I'm going through a 10-month course for a certification of completion. Would like more hands-on experience. 10 months that's pretty good. That's not a boot camp, obviously. I'm assuming when someone tells me I'm going to go to a boot camp, I usually think that's a week long, 2 weeks long max. I have seen some places advertise that they are a boot camp, but it's really a 8-week study process to do this. That's not a boot. In my mind, that's not a boot camp. 8 weeks is a class. You're taking a class. When I see the word boot camp, it means we're going to teach you everything you need to know to get certified with this certification in a week, in 5 business days. And you've been saying 3 days, a weekend, a short period of time. Well, there's a whole problem with logistics there. There's a physics problem. It's not possible. It's physically not possible to teach you everything you need to know to pass the certification in 5 business days. Even if you wake up in the morning and you stay awake till midnight and you do it for 5 days in a row, that's still not enough time. There's not enough. You can't do it. Physically, you cannot do that. So that's not going to help you. So boot camps are, from that perspective, they talk a good talk, but physically, there's no way to walk it. You can't do it. It doesn't work that way. The other part of this is, let's say that you have been studying for this. You do have a pretty good knowledge of this, and you want to go to the 5-day piece to kind of lock it in. Well, they're not going to teach you anything in that 5-day that you already don't know. You've already spent your time learning those things. A 5-day expensive boot camp is not going to give you the return that you need. So it's a lose-lose in every situation I can think of. There's no way to learn everything you need and be able to get the return on that investment of taking that boot camp. Boot camps are incredibly expensive. And I don't mean like a normal course. They put boot camp on there so they can charge a premium. They're expensive. We're talking $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 for 5 days. And they tell you, we guarantee you're going to pass. You're absolutely going to pass. They can't guarantee that. There's no way to do that because they can't possibly teach you everything you need to know. And in fact, the money they would give back, they're still making a huge profit, even if they had to give some of that money back. So I don't like the business model. I don't think it's practical. I don't think it applies to what we do from a certification perspective. And ultimately, you need to learn this stuff. You're going to be using this the rest of your career. Certifications aren't here so that you can check a box on a resume. Well, they are, but that's not the biggest reason that you get a certification. They are so that you can learn what is in the certification, that you've gone through the A+. You now have an understanding of how to install memory and work with operating systems and troubleshoot the boot process and understand what to do when there's this type of problem. And what do I do with all these batteries that are left over? And you got to have that knowledge in your head. Same thing with Network Plus, knowing all those wires so that you can pull up a patch cable, put the two ends of the patch cable, look at it and say, I know exactly how this cable's wired. That's valuable for somebody working with technology the way we are. You can't learn that in the time you need in a boot camp. So my personal perspective is this is a 1 to 2 week boot camp. It's not worth it. I can't find any scenario where it makes sense. It never makes sense. And of course, they're selling like hotcakes. If you go look at the people that are doing boot camps, they can't keep them. They just fill them up. They can't keep them empty. They're doing boot camps like crazy. I don't get it. But I think a lot of times it's an employer that's sending them. The employer's paying for it. Maybe there is a cost benefit to the employer. I don't know. Maybe they don't know any other way to do it other than that. So it's not a great solution, to say the least. But it's out there and people are using it and people are trying to get through their certifications that way. I just don't think it's very practical. I don't think it's a good cost-effective use of learning this. Plus, you have so many places you could go to learn this content in so many different ways, not just mine, but other people as well, that are relatively low cost. So why wouldn't you do that? So it's not even, I can't find a way where it makes sense. And it's true in the chat room mentioning they promise that why do it the hard way? You can make 6 figures and you take this 2 weeks and you're here, you're done. It doesn't work that way. The maybe 6 weeks is a little better. I guess there's a balancing act you do. Is it 6 weeks of 9 to 5 every day for 6 weeks? That's at least a little bit better, but that's so much so quickly that I don't even know if that's worth it. I'd be worthless after 6 weeks of that. How could you do that? You can't. It just doesn't make sense. If somebody can work the logistics there, they can figure out the physics around that to make it work, I'd love to hear it. But it just doesn't seem like it fits. It just doesn't seem like it works. So I've never supported or recommended doing boot camps. I think learning the content, understanding the content, and then taking your exam is a much better way, not only short-term to get your cert, but long-term to use this knowledge throughout your entire career. So that's what I think. Now for 10 months, that's good. I like that. Even a college course, if I was going to take a semester for Network Plus, that makes sense to me. A semester for Security Plus, that makes sense to me. You're not doing it all day, every day. You got people you can work through. It's very well laid out, but you're doing it over, a 12-week period or whatever it happens to be. That makes more sense, but not a week. Don't do that. That just doesn't make sense at all. What's a good study time for the CCNA? Well, the CCNA is a little bit different. There's a lot more hands-on in the CCNA. CCNA, the Cisco Certified Network Administrator certification, is, I would not call it an entry-level cert, but I would probably call it the next level after Network Plus. In some cases, for some people, they could possibly skip Network Plus, but you're going to have to learn everything anyway when you hit the CCNA. So why wouldn't you learn Network Plus content first before you move up a level? CCNA is very hands-on, a lot of troubleshooting, a lot of working at the command line, a lot of typing, a lot of understanding concepts and being able to implement those concepts in switches, routers, and other technologies. So it's a little broader than Network Plus in that respect. So I would minimum, it's going to range generally for everybody, but 3 months is a pretty good time frame for CCNA. If I was taking it right now, probably 6 months, because I got stuff going on, and it takes me a long time to sit down and get in a groove and spend an hour or two a night and do. So for me, it's longer than 3 months. Everybody's different. I've seen somebody go through CCNA in a matter of weeks. So it just depends on your personal knowledge, your experience, what you've been doing with it. I think that's the way to go about doing it. That makes sense to me from a CCNA perspective. That's where 3 months I think fits well into what people are, at least what I'm seeing and what people are doing. It's about 2 to 3 months for Network Plus. So if it's 2 to 3 for Network Plus, probably 2 to 3 for CCNA is probably about right too. But that's always a fun one. I think CCNA, if you're into hands-on, command line, working through the details of that, it's a fun one. So I think that would be a good one to go with as well. You can't go wrong with the Cisco stuff. They have good certifications. People like the certs, but it's different than Network Plus. Don't get a CCNA thinking it's an either or with Network Plus. Those are two certifications that handle two different kinds of jobs. Employers are asking for one or the other of these. They're not interchangeable. So find the one that fits for the job you want. Go get that one. Again, go see what people are asking for. If you find that everybody's asking for CCNA, obviously go get that one. I just don't think that's what you're going to find for those. We'll have to see. We'll have to see where the industry goes with this. We never know. I think there's still a place for Network Plus, and I think there's still a place for CCNA, and I think they are two different. In the Venn diagram of things, I don't think they overlap very much. I think they are definitely standalone, and for good reason, and you should probably get both eventually if you're going to be doing anything with networking. That's my opinion. So hopefully that will work through those pieces. Hopefully, we'll have to see if that's the case. Well, that brings us to the end of another hour of Q&A. Thank you so much for your phone calls. Thank you for the questions in the chat room. Thank you for being here and being in our first hour and working through all of the things that I send you those questions. We'll do more of this next week. Come on back for the Security Plus study group we have next week. That one's always good too. And then we've got more Network Plus next month. Be sure to check the calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. You'll know exactly when the next live event is going to be. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on the Network Plus study group. Thanks, everyone.